Hello and welcome back to the channel where flavor knows no borders. This is Food Around Me.
Think French cuisine is just about wine and fancy cheese. Big mistake. In this video, we uncover the top 10 French foods that shock Americans, from snails, frog legs, to luxurious foie gras and outrageously smelly cheese. This isn't just food, it's about culture, power, and even hidden desires behind the dishes. To most Americans, snails are slimy, slow garden pests, something you step on by accident and go. But in France, escargots, snails baked in garlic butter, are the very definition of sophistication. Served on silver trays, each shell filled with melted butter, garlic, and herbs, it's a luxury appetizer. For Americans, the reaction is usually, "Who eats garden snails?" But for the French, escargots are a tradition, especially from Burgundy, where it's not about eating snails, it's about turning the ordinary into the extraordinary. Surprisingly, snail meat is high in protein, low in fat, and packed with minerals. So not only is it fancy, it's actually healthier than an American burger. Foie gras, fatty goose liver, one of the most luxurious symbols of French cuisine. To many Americans, the name instantly evokes Michelin-starred restaurants, fine red wine, and buttery slices of liver that melt on the tongue. But behind this elegance lies one of the biggest debates in food history, not just about taste, but about ethics. Foie gras is essentially the liver of ducks or geese that have been force-fed to enlarge the liver many times beyond its natural size. The result, a rich, buttery delicacy praised by gourmets as the pinnacle of French gastronomy. Yet, that very process has sparked outrage, especially in the United States, where animal rights movements have pushed for bans. Some states have even outlawed foie gras altogether, calling it a product of cruelty. It has become a cultural battlefield. For France, foie gras is heritage, a proud tradition. For Americans, it's divisive. Some admire it as the height of luxury dining, others condemn it as unethical. That tension makes foie gras not just food, but a symbol of never-ending controversy. Scientifically, it's also telling. Foie gras is extremely high in saturated fat, indulgent for the palate, but dangerous for the heart. Still, when lightly seared, served with crusty bread and a hint of sweet jam, it transforms into an irresistible luxury experience. And so the question remains, can we enjoy this lavish pleasure while keeping compassion for animals? Or is cuisine, by nature, always a negotiation between indulgence and morality? Tartare, raw minced beef mixed with onion, capers, and topped with a raw egg yolk, usually served with toasted bread. For the French, it's pure sophistication, fresh, sweet, rich, and elegant in its simplicity. But for many Americans, the very word raw meat triggers panic. Visions of bacteria and food poisoning instantly appear. Here's the twist. Americans love their rare steaks, but once the beef is ground into tiny pieces, their brains flip the danger switch. In Europe, tartare is refined. In America, it feels like playing Russian roulette with your stomach. The irony? Fast food pumped with grease and chemicals is totally fine, but a clean, fresh cut of beef, terrifying. And Willette, the name sounds fancy, but in reality, it's a sausage made from pig or cow intestines, mixed with onions, pepper, and white wine, then stuffed into a casing. Biting into it, you get that chewy crunch of intestine, the pungent aroma blending with spices. The French describe it as authentic, rustic, full of tradition, but truth be told, that faint scent of ammonia and waste never really goes away. In fact, even many French people can't stomach it. For Americans, the idea of intestine sausage alone is enough to trigger instant disgust. They often call it smelly trash food. Yet for French food lovers, that very off-putting flavor is the ultimate badge of culinary bravery. The irony, Americans happily munch on factory hot dogs loaded with preservatives, but run from a handmade sausage, just because it's a little too real. frog legs, or cuisses de grenouille, are perhaps one of the most shocking dishes to Americans. For them, frogs are swamp creatures associated with muddy wetlands, slimy and gross. So when they hear the French call it a national delicacy, the reaction is usually wide-eyed horror. You eat that jumpy thing. But in France, frog legs are considered the height of refinement. The meat is white, tender, delicately flavored, often sautéed in butter and garlic or braised in wine sauce. In fact, it's famously compared to chicken. The French joke, frogs are just the chickens of the swamp. The irony, Americans recoil at the thought of eating frogs, yet they happily devour industrial chicken wings pumped with hormones. The French, on the other hand, elevate frog legs into haute cuisine, served with elegance and pride. Which leads to the perfect punchline. In America, frogs are only allowed to croak in cartoons. In France, they're honored with a silver plate and a drizzle of garlic butter. Tête de veau, or calf's head stew, is one of France's most traditional, most controversial, and frankly, hardest to digest dishes. The French see it as a symbol of heritage, often tied to solemn occasions and even politics. But for outsiders, especially Americans, the idea of eating an entire calf's head is enough to send them running. Picture this: a young calf's head, simmered for hours with vegetables and herbs, then served whole. Some restaurants present the skull intact, while others carve out the meat, the tongue, the gelatinous cheeks, even the brain. To traditional French diners, this is a way of honoring the animal. Nothing goes to waste. To Americans, used to boneless, skinless, faceless cuts, it looks like a horror movie served on fine china. But there's a deeper layer. Tête de veau carries political symbolism. In the 19th century, French Republicans held feasts of this dish to commemorate the execution of King Louis XVI. Eating calf's head wasn't just culinary, it was revolutionary, decapitating the old regime, celebrating the new order. So, tête de veau is not just food. It's history, ritual, and the intertwining of cuisine with power. The French call it tradition. Americans look at it and say, "Note, that's just fear factor on a plate." In France, eating calf's head is a historical act. In America, just seeing it might trigger a call to animal control. Boudin noir, or blood sausage, is one of France's oldest culinary traditions. The name alone can make people squirm, but in reality, it's a powerhouse of iron and protein. For the French, it's comfort food, served with mashed potatoes, sautéed apples, or simply tucked into a crusty baguette. The recipe is straightforward: fresh pig's blood mixed with fat, onions, and spices, stuffed into a casing, then boil or pan fry. Its flavor is rich, slightly sweet, and deeply savory. To European diners, from France to Spain to the UK, this has been a staple since medieval times. But for Americans, the word blood is a deal-breaker. In the US, animal blood is usually discarded, associated with waste, horror movies, or even taboo. Meanwhile, in Asia, dishes like blood pudding or blood porridge are perfectly normal. Same ingredient, completely different mindset, a cultural shock on a plate. Even more ironic, boudin noir was once considered poor man's food, using every part of the animal to survive. Today, Michelin-starred restaurants plate it as haute cuisine. From cheap protein to fine dining, that's one hell of a glow-up. The French call it culinary heritage. Americans hear it and think they've just been cast as an extra in a vampire movie. France is home to over 1,200 types of cheese. But among them, the most famous, or rather, infamous, are the so-called fromage cuipu, literally, stinky cheese. Its smell, some say it's like socks worn 3 days straight, others swear it's closer to a garbage dump on a hot afternoon. Yet, for cheese lovers, that strong odor signals depth, richness, and perfect ripeness. Varieties like Époisses, Munster, or Roquefort are prized precisely for being stinky. The French pair it with bread and wine, treating it as a work of art, but Americans, one whiff and they're out the door. For them, strong cheese means spoiled, rotten, or simply inedible, something to toss in the trash, not savor at the table. What's fascinating is that this cheese is alive, crafted by active bacteria. It's microbiology on a plate, both science and heritage. But if you're not used to it, it feels less like fine dining and more like being gassed in your own kitchen. The French call it a delicacy. Americans just want to call hazardous waste control. In Normandy, France, there's a dish with a fancy name, but an ingredient that makes most Americans recoil: trips à la mode de Caen, beef tripe stew with cider and wine. The main stars are beef stomach and intestines, slow-cooked for hours with cider, white wine, carrots, onions, garlic, and herbs. After long simmering in an earthenware pot, the tough, smelly tripe transforms into a rich, tender, aromatic stew, true French comfort food. For the people of Normandy, this is more than just food, it's culinary heritage. The dish is officially recognized as a traditional specialty, tied to local history and the patience of French cooking. It's enjoyed during festivals, paired with cider, and cherished as a taste of home. The irony is, Americans love beefsteaks, burgers, briskets. Yet when it comes to awful cuisine, they turn away in disgust. Meanwhile, the French, as always, turn what others throw away into gourmet art. The French raise a glass of cider, while Americans raise the trash can. When we think of French cuisine, we imagine wine, cheese, foie gras. But in the south of France, there's a dish that started as poor man's food, then transformed into a luxury icon: bouillabaisse, the famous fish stew of Marseille. Interestingly, Italy has its own sibling, zuppa di pesce. Both were born from the same idea, turning humble seafood into culinary masterpieces. Bouillabaisse was born in Marseille's harbor. After a long day at sea, fishermen would gather the fish no one wanted to buy: bony, small, unsellable. They'd throw them into a pot with tomatoes, onions, garlic, olive oil, and Provençal herbs. From scraps came survival and flavor. In Italy, it was the same story. In Naples or Sicily, zuppa di pesce was built from discarded fish: squid, shrimp, clams, small fish. What couldn't be sold became what everyone loved at home. The French, of course, made things complex. A true bouillabaisse requires at least 3 to 4 different fish: scorpionfish, sea bass, grouper, sometimes even lobster. And it must be served with rye, garlicky, spicy aioli spread over crusty bread. In France, even soup needs rituals. Italy, on the other hand, is looser. Zuppa di pesce can change with the season, the catch, or simply the mood of the cook. A splash of white wine, different herbs, it's improvisation at its best. Originally humble, bouillabaisse rose to fame in the 19th century with the boom of Riviera tourism. Wealthy travelers demanded the fisherman's stew, and restaurants paraded it with lobster, scallops, rare fish. What was once survival food became Michelin-level fine dining. Americans, upon seeing a bowl priced at hundreds of dollars, were stunned. "It's just fish soup," they cry. But to the French, every step, the simmering time, the layering of flavors, the ritual of eating is art. For the French, bouillabaisse is Mediterranean poetry. For Americans, it's just fishy tomato water with an $80 price tag.
If you've made it this far, maybe your curiosity isn't average. Maybe you don't just eat to survive, you eat to understand, so don't just scroll away. Drop a thought in the comments, something only you would say. Like this video if it sparked anything inside you. And hit subscribe, not for the algorithm, but for the next question you never knew you needed. Because here, we don't feed the masses, we feed the minds that wonder.